Thousands of years before the Prequel Era and the infamous Clone Wars, there was a tremendous battle between Jedi and Sith. The Jedi-Sith War occurred around the time that the fall of the Old Republic. It saw Jedi and their army of light take on the Sith Brotherhood of Darkness. Both Jedi and Sith had numbers which the galaxy would not see again. There will be a separate transmission all about this epic battle. This transmission is all about Darth Bane, the sole survivor of the bloody conflict. As the only Sith left in the entire galaxy, Bane must have felt a huge responsibility to keep his religion alive. He saw how much infighting happened amongst the Sith and believed if they had just put their differences aside, they could have won the war, taking control of the galaxy. This was the birth of the Rule of Two as we know it. Bane himself has a quote to quickly sum it up for us.
There should be only two, no more, no less. One to embody power, the other one to crave it.
For more on the Rule of Two, check the link in the description for a transmission all about it. The other part of Bane's legacy is in the equally important, though less talked about, Grand Plan. This plan would have the Sith lurk in the shadows as they undermine the Republic, discredit the Jedi, and eventually take control of the galaxy. To follow through on his own declarations, Darth Bane would take on an apprentice, Zannah. At this point, we're going to dive into legend sources as Bane's story isn't fully fleshed out in canon. It's worth exploring, not just because it's a cool story, but because Darth Bane is a very influential figure for the Sith and the galaxy. Rewinding things a bit, Legends has Darth Bane's birth name as Dessel. He was a human born on Apatros. In canon, his homeworld was updated to be Moraband, which is also called Korriban, and known as the homeworld of the Sith. Dessel's mother died in childbirth, and his father never let him forget it. His father was physically and mentally abusive, setting Dessel on the dark path to becoming Darth Bane from a young age. In fact, when Dessel becomes a Sith, he actually chooses the name Bane to spite his father. His father would say he was the bane of his existence, and the insulting nickname Bane was used. On a particularly bad night, Dessel's father beat him so badly he broke some ribs. Dessel, laying in his bed in incredible pain, was seething with anger. He kept picturing a massive hand squeezing his father's heart. When he awoke the next morning, his father was dead. Whatever Dessel thought it was the night before, a fantasy, dream, or vision, it was actually him using the Force to kill his father. When he was about 23 Galactic Standard years old, he got in a fight with an ensign of the Galactic Republic. He had taken a massive pot off the man in a card game. Dessel had grown physically large working in the mines his whole life. He was also tough from a lifetime of physical abuse by his father and his father's friends. Taking on this ensign wasn't a challenge. The man pulled a blade. Dessel, acting with reflexes that only humans imbued with Force sensitivity possess, turned the blade on the wielder and stabbed him to death with it. Despite acting in self-defense, Dessel was facing a harsh prison sentence. A local tavern owner, a Neimoidian called Groshik, was the closest thing Dessel ever had to a friend. Groshik arranged for Dessel to be smuggled off-world when he fled, and he joined a branch of the Sith military. Military life was a good fit for Dessel. He rose in the ranks and was a sergeant in a unit with the awesome name of Gloomwalkers. Still unaware of his connection to the Force worked through him just the same. His supernatural intuition made his battle strategies incredible. He was responsible for the unit's success during offenses and knew when his unit should pull back, saving many lives. His commanding officers always stole the credit, but his peers knew who was really to thank. The Gloomwalkers received orders that were akin to a suicide march. This was not intentional. The higher-ups of the Sith army weren't trying to kill them off. I'm guessing it was just bad intel. When Dessel's immediate commanding officer ordered them all to follow the bad orders anyway, he knocked the man out and took charge. Dessel turned certain defeat into a victory. Once again, the Force worked passively through him. Despite the success, the CO that had been knocked out turned him into Sith command. Rather than being punished, Darth Kopex offered Dessel a place in the Sith Academy on Korriban. This would be similar in concept to the Jedi Temple that we'd seen in the prequels. This is an interesting moment where legends and canon line up. I don't even think it was done intentionally. Dessel saw this opportunity as a fresh start, a chance to reinvent himself. He put his past behind him and adopted the name Bane, giving himself a completely fresh identity. Darth Bane's homeworld truly is Korriban, literally in canon, and in Legends, from a certain point of view. Much like his time in the Sith military, the training he would receive would go very well for Bane. He learned quickly, rose in the ranks, and his power jumped dramatically. After an incident where Bane killed a peer who had been taunting him through an uncontrollable wave of dark energy, Bane escaped punishment once again. He started receiving special attention from the Academy's Blade Master. After this uncontrolled wave of energy, Bane realized he was responsible for his father's death. He didn't seem to regret the death of his father or this bullying student at the Academy, but the power of the dark side and his inability to control it made Bane nervous. His self-doubt caused his connection to the Force to wane. He tried to hold his standing with the Academy, but with his powers weakened, he was defeated in a combat exercise. The other pupils saw what was happening to Bane, and they turned their backs on him. He retreated into self-study. While learning of the history of the Sith, he saw the Brotherhood of Darkness, the particular sect of the Sith he was currently studying under, as a flawed institution. In Bane's eyes, it was perverting what a Sith could be. He plotted to gain what he could from the Order before deserting it. He played two of his teachers and received unique teachings from a former Jedi and took private lessons in lightsaber combat. All the while, he secretly visited the archives, and his connection to the dark side not only returned, but it thrived. Bane finally had enough. Circumstances led to him being forbidden from his self-studies and private lessons. His peers were elevated around him, leaving him behind even though he knew he was more powerful. The few friends he thought he had conspired with his enemies to have him killed. Bane killed one of the Academy's most promising students. He denounced the Brotherhood and declared himself Darth. To add some salt to the wound, he even stole the personal starship of the head of the Academy. Bane would become very powerful with the help of Sith holocrons recorded by Darth Revan of the Old Republic. Most notably, a Sith ability called the Thought Bomb. Bane's plan to travel the galaxy alone and gain power was constantly interrupted by members of the Brotherhood he left behind. He had more than one encounter that nearly ended his life. He decided they must be dealt with once and for all. The Brotherhood of Darkness was in a longer war with the Jedi and their Army of Light. Bane showed up to the front lines of the battle on the planet Ruusan. He showed up under the guise of helping his former peers, though he couldn't help himself but mock their limited power in the Force as the Brotherhood was holding them back. Bane convinced the other Sith to channel their energy into him so he could unleash a Force wave powerful enough to eliminate the enemy Jedi in one big move. They all agreed, and Bane's power grew. The wave began and destroyed the Jedi's encampment. The Jedi started to flee. Bane was attempting to increase the wave to a killing blow when the Sith around him, led by a former classmate of Bane's, pulled out of the ritual. Githany, the fallen Jedi that had taught Bane so many Force powers, sided with the Brotherhood. Bane was disappointed. His plan was to not only succeed in this battle, but then to take her on as his first pupil. As the Sith Brotherhood went to take the Jedi down in melee combat, Bane retreated to the Sith base. He ran into the former head of the Academy, Cortus, who was now leading the army. Cortus extended a hand to Bane, saying they could take over the Brotherhood together. Bane had no interest. He took great pleasure in informing the Master, who had failed him, that he had no interest in taking over the Brotherhood. He was there to destroy it. Bane force-choked Cortus to death, denying him a warrior's death in a lightsaber battle. Bane then sent communications to the Sith fleet orbiting the planet to engage the Jedi fleet. This led to most of the Sith ships being destroyed, and the Jedi were able to reinforce their ground troops. The Sith's victory switched quickly to a loss, high in casualties, all because of Bane's meddling. Through more conniving maneuvers, Bane assisted the Sith in killing most of the Jedi before the Sith themselves were wiped out. The Jedi had no knowledge of Bane in his encounter and left the battlefield thinking they had finally destroyed the Sith. This is another parallel to Bane's canon story, where he's the only Sith left alive, with the Jedi feeling that they've won. Bane wandered the aftermath of the long-standing war. He encountered a young girl who was dripping with darkside. She showed no fear at the sight of Bane, and even revealed she had killed 2 Jedi. Bane was pleased. He had found his apprentice in Xana. It took some more time for all remnants of the Brotherhood to be eliminated, but Bane and Xana eventually accomplished this goal and took the vast resources for their own. For a decade, Bane trained Xana and built a massive network around himself. He obtained all the information he could on how to eliminate the Jedi Order and take control of the galaxy. In this version of the story, Bane would establish the rule of two, not out of desperation to keep the Sith alive, but out of a desire for control and to keep the Sith pure to what he thought they should be. Xana would often go on solo missions under Bane's guidance. She would stir up small pockets of rebellion on various planets or in different systems. The idea here was to keep the Republic busy and weakened. On one of these missions, Xana teamed up with a Force-sensitive man named Hetton and his small band of assassins. She had them try to kill Bane. Bane defeated the lot before turning his rage on Xana. She managed to keep her life by claiming she was playing Hetton for information the entire time. The information she got out of him was the location of an ancient Sith fortress on the planet Tython. This fortress belonged to Dark Lord Belia Darzu. Darzu is an interesting enough character for a transmission all her own. Briefly, she was a born shapeshifter. She was also an alchemist and studied an incredibly rare Sith technique known as Meku Deru. Check back soon for a transmission all about Darzu. Darzu had information on how to create Sith holocrons. Bane was interested in this since these holocrons were a big part of his own success. He wanted to record his own to pass his knowledge down for future generations of Sith to learn from. The Jedi gained knowledge of Bane's plan and sent a detachment of Jedi Knights to execute it. Sorry to keep digressing, normally I like to present this information and leave it there, but this strikes me as odd. The Jedi sending their own to execute somebody, whether they're a Sith or not, seems very against the ideals of the Jedi Order. Either way, 4 Jedi Knights confronted Bane and Xana. 2 were dispatched quickly. The 3rd was injured, and the 4th managed to throw up a powerful Force barrier just as Bane tried to kill him using Force lightning. The lightning recoiled on Bane, wounding him and killing his living Orbalisk armor. As his armor died, the creatures released a toxin. Xana acted quickly and brought her master to a healer named Caleb. Yep, Caleb. On the planet Ambria. The informant who told the Jedi the Sith were on Tython was a childhood friend of Xana's, a man called Daravit. She dragged Daravit along with them. The healer would only save Bane if Xana turned themselves into the Jedi. She did so. Caleb did his part, and Bane was furious when he awoke until Xana revealed her full plan. She killed the healer and then used the Force to ruin Deverett's mind. When the Jedi arrived, Bane and Xana were nowhere to be seen. Daravit, no longer in control of himself, attacked the Jedi. The Jedi mistook him for the Sith Lord they came to execute and killed him. They once again thought that the Sith were extinct. This pleased Bane greatly. His pleasure with his apprentice would fade in time. After his injuries fighting off the Jedi and the incredible amount of dark side energy roiling around inside of him, he was aging faster than he should. Bane worried about the rule of two he created and the future of the Sith. He began to think Xana was too weak to overthrow him while he was still powerful, a necessary challenge to keep the line of Sith strong. Bane decided he needed more time. He learned of Darth Endedu, an ancient Sith who lived for centuries thanks to the dark side. Through some maneuvering, Bane learned the location of Endedu's old fortress. He retrieved a secured holocron from it and forced the device to give up the information he needed against the will of Endedu's captured essence. The holocron taught Bane about essence transfer, a way a Sith could transfer their consciousness and power into a new body to keep living. It was a risky maneuver, but Bane saw it as his only option. A group of mercenaries ambushed Bane when he returned to the base that he and Xana kept. Many were killed in the ambush, but eventually Bane was injected with a neurotoxin that knocked him unconscious. He was captured under the order of Princess Sarah of Doan. She was the sister of Caleb the healer. Bane was kept sedated, but only enough that he couldn't escape. Sarah wanted him conscious enough to feel the torture she applied. One of Bane's guards was a woman named Lucia, who had served with Bane way back when he was still Decil in the new Sith Wars. Lucia felt that she owed Bane a debt and assisted in his escape by counteracting the sedatives and letting his full power return. Xana learned of Bane's immortality bid. She incorrectly thought it was so he could live forever and always be the master in the rule of two, never letting her rise. She killed Lucia and challenged Bane to combat. She saw it as her time to take the title of Dark Lord. Bane said she wasn't ready. The very fact that she was attacking him in a weakened state and without a lightsaber was proof enough. She attacked anyway. Bane was able to keep his apprentice at bay through the use of the Force, but knew that without his lightsaber, the battle would eventually turn Xana's way. Bane used the Force to collapse the tunnel that him and Xana were in, separating the two of them. As Bane fled, desperate to find a ship, the leader of the assassins that got him captured, Ictachi, was before him. Instead of another fight, Ictachi bowed before him and presented Bane with his own lightsaber. She said she felt his power and requested he take her on as his new apprentice. Xana was clearly not holding that position anymore, so Bane agreed. The new pairing tracked Sarah back to Ambria, a planet that comes up a lot in the legend of Bane. Ictachi, now going by Darth Cognis, killed Sarah as she pleaded for her life. Before Bane could start the new master-apprentice relationship with Cognis, he needed to deal with Xana. He sent her a communication, challenging her to finish things, and she agreed. Neither Xana nor Cognis knew that Bane had a larger plan. Cognis was ordered to stay out of everything. Xana and Bane's fight was furious. They used unique force abilities on each other, the coolest being Xana's dark side tentacles that were like jellyfish things, causing incredible pain in Bane. They used lightsabers as well, but they were both determined to not just kill each other, but cast, I'm going to say soul for lack of a better term, into a void where they'd be tortured for eternity. This is where things get really interesting and even tie into the original and sequel trilogies. I had read about Darth Bane before the expanded universe was called Legends, and never made this connection until I was brushing up on things for this very transmission. His entries in the new Essential Guide to Characters, and of course, the Star Wars Encyclopedia, which has been invaluable to this channel, and the Jedi vs. Sith, the Essential Guide to the Force. In The Return of the Jedi, as well as The Rise of Skywalker, Palpatine insists that his opponent, Luke Skywalker and Rey respectively, strike him down. The plan being that if his opponent strikes him down in a fit of rage, they will be susceptible to the Sith essence transfer, and all of Palpatine's power would travel, along with his consciousness, into their body where he could control them and add their power to his. Darth Bane had the same plan. He started the internal process of essence transfer, essentially getting his entire being ready to take control of Xana's body. He needed his will and his connection to the dark side to be able to overpower Xana's own at the moment of his current body's death. Xana was more powerful than her former master gave her credit for. She mostly resisted the transfer, and Bane died. Xana took the title of Dark Lord of the Sith. I did say she mostly resisted. A small piece of Bane would go on with Xana. Would she succumb to it? You'll have to check back on the channel for a future transmission all about Darth Xana. Darth Bane, whether in canon or legends, had a lot of influence on the future of the galaxy. He created the Rule of Two in both versions, which was fundamental for everything we know of the Sith in the prequel, original, and sequel eras. While his canon story is much shorter than his Legends one, I appreciate that it's kept a bit cleaner. In revisiting Bane's story, I found a few things that seemed a bit off with the story. Some decisions that didn't track with me, and even a couple smaller contradictions. These things are bound to happen with so many cooks in the proverbial kitchen of the expanded universe and Star Wars at large. How I see and reconcile these things is the same thing I do for any of the myths and legends from Earth culture. Different tellings, translations, and cultural explanations can alter details slightly, but it all serves the same narrative. Go here for more amazing Legends transmissions.